We often discuss gratitude here at Unity. Some of us pick a thing to be grateful for every day. It helps us raise our happiness level. One thing to be grateful for puts us in the mood for another and another. It's a good thing to get us started in a positive direction. It definitely helps us move out of depression and unhappiness. Thessalonians 5:18, we just heard an earlier part, reminds us to give thanks in all circumstances. That means being grateful for whatever happens. Wouldn't it be wonderful to live in joyfully always? Can we achieve this? My friend, Mark Spencer, some of you know him. He gave me permission to talk about him, as long as I said something good. He's just thankful for everything. He's grateful no matter what he's experiencing. I've seen him grateful when he's experiencing serious pain and being taken to the hospital. And then he's grateful for the hospital food. He says thank you to everyone he interacts with. There is a difference between situation or circumstances and the present or reality. Circumstances have a past and a future. And, I almost missed that. And so it's like, this happened to me, and therefore this is going to happen in the future, kind of a thing. The present moment has no backstory. Therefore, it's easy to be in gratitude in the present moment. It's beneficial to spend time in gratitude in the now moment. That's not to say you should refrain from expressing gratitude for all the past or future. That passage in Thessalonians, give thanks in all conditions. Conditions encompass our story, too. How do we bring ourselves to gratitude in all conditions? When I was in my second year of college, I fell into a severe depression. I had been sick from mononucleosis for a month. I was behind in several of my most important classes, and I was paying for my own education and had to work in a low-paying job in order to cover my expenses. I thought life sucked. I took a walk from my house, thinking about what was terrible in my life. And then suddenly, I just stopped. The sky was blue. The sun was warm. I had been fed, so I wasn't hungry. There was just beauty all around me. What's not to love? It was like an instant healing from depression. One of the most useful tools I learned from this was to separate my awareness of the present moment from my story. You know, many times we tend to think of our story as being present. So teasing out what is real in the present moment from what is the ongoing story in our head can enable us to find the now more easily. As I began trying to manifest what I wanted in my life, I found myself more and more unhappy with the way things are. There was such a big gap between what was my current life and what I wanted to manifest. The mistake when we're unhappy with the life we have is in comparing it to what we want. A Course in Miracles, lesson 195, paragraph 8 says, walk then in gratitude the way of love. For hatred is forgotten when we lay comparisons aside. What more remains as obstacles to peace? When your forgiveness is complete, you will have total gratitude, for you will see that everything that has earned the right to love by being loving, even as yourself. Neither our current circumstances nor our desire for the future is in the present moment. One of the ways we can make peace with our current circumstances is to realize that this is our manifestation. You made this. It is the sum of your beliefs, expectations, and intentions, and where you put your attention. I did a channeling session once, not very long ago. I actually didn't remember doing it until I found it in a notebook when I was looking for a blank page. And I must have been asking God something about the present moment because it was titled From God. So, and it definitely dealt with manifestation and the present moment. It went like this. Precious. All is precious. Being. Precious. Tenderly hold all beings present. Relax and float to your destiny. Hold nothing back. You are enough, always enough. Open your eyes and watch me speak in reality. Watch me speak in reality. When we come up against situations and conditions we don't like, this is God showing us that we have a blockage in our expression of love. We're holding something back. We're feeling like we're not enough. We're not living in gratitude for the precious moment. And those unhappy circumstances are a message. God speaking in reality. Thank God for showing us where we have blocked the flow. It brings to my mind watching the sport of curling. Do y'all know about curling? I think you only see it in the Olympics. Someone throws this on the ice, this big heavy stone, 44-pound piece of rock. And another person on the team is in front of the stone and sweeping like crazy, like this, to smooth the way for the stone to get to its goal. We are throwing our granite stone toward our goal and then sweeping away what slows it down. Sometimes we hit a barrier, and sometimes another piece of granite hits us. But we keep sweeping away what's slowing us down and smoothing the way to our goal, and eventually we make it. It's important to know that it's not our job to attract our goal to us. That's God's work. It's our work to unblock what's in the way. And by that, I mean the inner work. It doesn't have to be hard work if we're willing to let it go. Most of the work is in making ourselves willing to let it go. It all comes down to forgiveness in the end, doesn't it? The present moment, the now, is so beautiful. Be grateful for what is. The rest is our story, what we make of our experiences, which we call our conditions. And it's one thing to say we're willing. The actual work is in teasing open our tight fist on those blockages. Step number 1 is to recognize what the blockage is. When God speaks to us in reality, we notice because it pushes our buttons. It highlights something we're having a reaction to. Let it be a signal to move to step number 2. Make moving to step number 2 a habit. Step number 2 is thank God, or the universe, or whatever you call it. Be grateful for showing you what is your part in achieving your goal. You are the sweeper. This is the 3rd step. Step number 3 is go inside and ask what it is inside you that's making you have a reaction to this condition. What is making it feel bad to you? Sometimes this might seem difficult. After all, what is making you have this reaction is usually deeply embedded in your psyche, something you have hardened in your heart until you think it's your truth, with a small t. Byron Katie wrote this book, Loving What Is. This book helps to untangle our stories and work through them to get to the truth. And I'm going to read a couple of pages in it. Becoming aware of your stories. I often use the word story to talk about the thoughts or sequences of thoughts that we convince ourselves are real. A story may be about the past, the present, or the future. It may be about what things should be, what they could be, or what they are. Stories appear in our minds hundreds of times a day. When someone gets up without a word and walks out of the room, when someone doesn't smile or doesn't return a phone call, or when a stranger does smile, before you open an important letter, or after you feel an unfamiliar sensation in your chest, when your boss invites you to come into his office, or when your partner talks to you in a certain tone of voice. Stories are the untested, uninvestigated theories that tell us what these things mean. We don't even realize that they're just theories. She says, once as I walked into the ladies' room at a restaurant near my home, a woman came out of the single stall. We smiled at each other, and as I closed the door, she began to sing and wash her hands. What a lovely voice, I thought. Then, as I heard her leave, I noticed the toilet seat was dripping wet. How could anybody be so rude, I thought. And how did she manage to pee all over the seat? Was she standing on it? Then it came to me she was a man, a transvestite singing falsetto in the women's restroom. It crossed my mind to go after her or him and let him know what a mess he'd made. As I cleaned the toilet seat, I thought about everything I'd say to him. Then I flushed the toilet. The water shot up out of the bowl and flooded the seat, and I just stood there laughing. In this case, the natural course of events was enough to expose my story before it went any further. Usually, it doesn't. Before I found inquiry, I had no way to stop this kind of thinking. Small stories bred bigger ones. Bigger stories bred major theories about life, how terrible it was, and how the world was a dangerous place. I ended up feeling too frightened and depressed to leave my bedroom. When you're operating on uninvestigated theories of what's going on, and you aren't even aware of it, you're in what I call the dream. Often the dream becomes troubling. Sometimes it even turns into a nightmare. At times like these, you may want to test the truth of your theory by doing the work on them. The work always leaves you with less of your uncomfortable story. Who would you be without it? How much of your world is made up of unexamined stories? You never know until you inquire. Byron Katie calls the inquiry the work. It's part of being the sweeper. She has you write down what's bothering you without trying to censor it. Write it all down. And doing so helps you be able to have some separation from them. You can notice things about them, like certain phrases that might stand out, the shoulds, the blaming, the need. The work involves a series of questions to work through around the specific circumstances or person you wrote about. The 4 questions and turnarounds are, is it true? Can I absolutely know that it is true? How do I react when I think that thought? Who would I be without the thought? And then there are some turnarounds. That last question, who would I be without the thought, reminds me of something I've noticed a number of times when I've been working on my own peace and well-being, and I observe this in others. It's when I notice someone doing something which irritates or offends or angers another. If I were to ask a different person how they would take it if that person did or said the irritating thing, the different person would often just shrug and then forget all about it. They might say, oh, well, that's just the way that person is, but it doesn't have to affect me. The offended person can't imagine letting it go. This is how the offended person can know that they are looking at one of their own personal blockages. This process of the work can go on and on with all our thoughts, which disturb our peace. It can be a lifetime of work. Those brushes in curling, by the way, they work actually by causing friction on the ice, which melts the surface of the ice, making the path slicker. I just like that concept of melting in context with letting go of blockages. Let me go over the first 3 steps that I outlined. Step number 1 is to recognize what the blockage is. When God speaks to us in reality, we notice because it pushes our buttons. It highlights something that we're having a reaction to. Let it be a signal to move to step number 2. Make this movement a habit. Step number 2 is thank God or the universe or whatever you call it. Be grateful for showing you what is your part in achieving your goal. You are the sweeper. Here's the 3rd step. Step number 3 is go inside and ask what it is inside you that's making you have a reaction to this condition. What is it? Why is it making you feel bad? Sometimes this might seem difficult. After all, whatever's making you have this reaction is usually deeply embedded in your psyche, something you have hardened in your heart until you think it's your truth. Go through the inquiry steps in loving what is. This is to build up your willingness to move to step 4. Leslie Garber is planning a book study on this book, Loving What Is, in which the group will use the inquiry steps and we'll be able to work through it together. I'm looking forward to that. Now, step number 4, let it go. Using the process in the book, or whatever you use in step number 3, you have now paved the way to letting go of that blockage. Letting go sounds easy, but for some it's the most difficult part. Maybe it doesn't seem concrete enough, and those old thoughts are tempting as refined sugar. You know the phrase, let go, let God? I find that once I see the lie in an old belief, or the pain caused by a tightly held thought, I go into prayer or meditation and declare my intent to let it go. Sometimes I actually visualize taking that thought and putting it on an altar and saying, God, I'm willing to let this go. Please take it from me. And after my meditation, I just go about my day, or if it's at nighttime, I'll just go to bed without another thought. Most of the time, if I test the thought much later, it feels dead, like it doesn't resonate with me at all. That's a healing. Thank you, God. Gratitude and love go hand in hand. When you offer love, you are giving gratitude, and vice versa. This is a story I've told before. It took place back in 1996 or 97 when I first started going here at Unity. My current husband and I had moved here to start a chiropractic clinic. We had sold my house in San Jose, and I quit my job in scientific sales and cashed in my retirement and 401k and came up here and bought an ongoing clinic housed in part of a residence. Due to the need to get a license in Oregon, a chiropractic license, it was over a year before my husband could start practicing. And in the meantime, we hired another doctor to see the few patients that we had. Doing that used up all our money. I took a job in a computer store where the margin was so small, I was only getting like $1,000 a month, and my bills were more like $3,000. So I started using credit for everything. I ended up buying gas, groceries, haircuts, utility bills, everything on credit. The credit card companies actually sent me these checks, so I used them too, even to pay the monthly credit card bills. Eventually, the credit cards reached their limit and I had nowhere to go. Around that time, I took an abundance class here at Unity, and I started to say a mantra to myself. I love you, God. And I actually embellished it a little with a response, I love you, Denita. And I said it over and over again. Whenever I was driving, whatever I was doing where I had a spare moment, I love you, God. I love you, Denita. I love you, God. It only took 3 days. And on that third day, I got a phone call. It was from a former coworker who had been promoted to manager. She told me I was famous. Everywhere she went in the Bay Area, people asked about me. And then she asked if I would be willing to take a Seattle territory. This job was a six-figure sales opportunity. With the job, I was able to get a mortgage on the clinic and house and used it to pay off the credit cards. That mantra, I love you, God, enabled me to relax. It drowned out the fear and thoughts about economic stuckness. I let go and let God. Now let's just go ahead and take this into meditation. Get comfortable. Feet on the floor. Let's have a breath or two. And as you relax, just allow your attention to move down to your heart. In this place where gratitude can swell, love for God, God's love for us, filling us. Know that in this space, we can leave our stories behind for a little while. They're always there to take them back if we want them. For now, be in no thought, only feeling gratitude. Gratitude for our being, for the precious now moment that is us, here. And in the silence, feel it totally. As you begin to move your awareness back into this room, you can open your eyes, feel the joy of all the people here, of a fantastic service today. Amen.